It's a great day to be a miner. In today's video, we're going to set up and we're going to mine some Raptoreum. Let's dig into it. All right. Today we're going to set up and mine some Raptoreum. We're going to set up a CPU. I'm a brand new noob at this. I haven't mined on a CPU since 2019. But let's just see if a noob that just knows basic mining can go ahead and set this thing up from start to finish and get this thing mining. So let's just dive into it and see exactly what we can get. Alright, so first things first, we have the main site set up here. This is Raptoreum.com, pretty easy to find. And let's go ahead into our remote session because I'm not actually setting up this PC that I'm on for mining yet. I'm going to go ahead and set up my PC bot build. You can check out that video up above. But let's go ahead and stop this thing mining. It has dual 3060 full hash rate cards. As you can see, they're doing about 49 mega hash a piece. And we're going to go ahead and stop that process, and let's go ahead and set up the mining, and let's go ahead and stop this Nova down here as well, and let's just close out a bunch of these extra tabs that we don't currently need and get this thing started. Alright, so we went ahead and closed our miner, we closed all of our extra stuff. Let's go ahead and bring up our website. This is the Raptoreum website, and from here, the very first thing you have to do when you mine anything, you have to have a wallet, a place to mine it to. And instead of actually going through the site and downloading a wallet or being redirected, I realized that I already have Zelcore, multi-asset coin wallet, and I've had this for years, probably since 2018, 2019, whenever they first started the project, way back when. I've been using that multi-asset wallet anyway, and so I'll just go ahead and pop it up, and then I'll create myself a receiving address, and then I'll go ahead and use that as what I'm going to mine to. So let's open that up. Okay, so let's go ahead and get ourselves an address out of our Zelcore wallet. Then we're going to go down to manage assets so that we can see the coin. We want to do an add asset. Then we want to do search for RTM, and there it is. Let's click it to add. It is now part of our wallet portfolio. If we go up here, and we want to show 0 balances over on the right because I don't have any balance on it, and scroll down, and there she is. Let's click on her, and then we want to do receive, and there it is. There is my Raptoreum receiving address. I'm just going to use that into the miner, so that I'll need that later. Let's go ahead and just copy that. And now let's pop back over into our remote session. The next thing you need whenever you're going to mine, you need something to mine with. Hit download, and let's do CPU miner from the main website. And then we're going to download the newest, the 1.2.4.1 hotfix. And the hotfix has something to do with Alder Lake 12th gen CPUs from Intel. And so let's go ahead and download the Windows.7 zip file. And she's downloading, and Chrome says, hey, this is dangerous, you can't have it. So let's go over to our downloads history, and there she is. We want to keep that file, keep dangerous file. It's not a virus, it's from the main site, so that one's good. And then let's go to our downloads folder and take a look here. And there it is. So there's the 7-zip. Let's extract that thing, 7-zip, and we're going to extract files. Let's extract that into the same folder, and there is our new miner folder. Let's take a look inside. So inside there's the readme, there's the bat file, and that's what tells the miner what to do, how to fire up. The config.json is actually a parameter that's set with the config file. So in this specific kind of miner, I assume we're going to set both. So let's look at the miner first, the bat file. And so down here, I don't think we're actually setting anything in this file. From what it looks like, I think we're specifically using, I think this is all going to actually stay in there. We're not going to edit that. What we're going to edit is the JSON, the config.json file for this one. And you can see mine has a little notepad beside it. That's because anytime they come in as a JSON file, I've already told my system that a JSON file should be opened with Notepad. You could use Notepad Plus or some other different various word editor type applications. So we'll do right click, we'll edit, and there it is. So here is our stratum. This is our URL. This is going to be our pool address right here. It defaults to a flock pool in the Europe pool. I assume that Flockpool probably has a US and a Europe. And then what they have next is they have a backup, a failover. So for this specific build, they have the Europe Flock pool as the primary, and they have the backup as the US West pool. And then over down here, the user is where we're going to put our wallet address and then dot whatever our worker name is going to be. So I'll do test rig or something like that as the name, and then my wallet address. We'll leave the password as X. The algorithm is already populated. It's GR for Ghostwriter. And then this is where you're going to tell the miner how many of your CPU threads you want it to mine on. And this specific CPU I'm using is an older but a really good CPU. It's a AMD Ryzen 1600af chip, which the AF is actually just a cut down 2600. So it's got 6 cores with 12 threads. So I might just set 10 threads in here, and I'll leave 2 for the system. I want to be able to still GPU mine at the same time I'm CPU mining. So I figure if I set 10 threads and I leave 2 for system, that should give an adequate enough amount to not interfere with the GPU mining and any of the other small processes that are running at the same time. And so then down here, this I actually kind of looked into. This is where you really need to full tune to get the most optimal hash rate for your CPU. And the full tune, I had heard, can take up to 4 hours. So what I'll do is once I get this all set up, I'll set this to true, and I'm going to let it full tune. I'm going to let this thing just run, let it figure everything out. And I also heard a tip as to when you do the full tune to make sure to close all kinds of the other applications. I'm going to close Afterburner. I won't have File Explorer with like my folder open or any of my Chrome tabs. I'll close all that stuff out. And then that way it's only focusing on the tuning and the CPU is not doing anything else. And I was also told, don't move your mouse during the full tuning. So set it, get it running, let it go. Just let it go all the way. And then once it finishes full tune, it actually will jump right into the mining file itself. And next, we're just going to leave number 5, tune config. We leave it alone. Then you can force miner to not tune. We're not doing that. We want it to tune. Then number 7, this is where you can force it to no tune, or you can force it to tune, like if you were going to retune it. If you just did a quick tune or whatever and you want to do a full tune the next time, you would have to go set this to true, and then you would have your full tune true up here, and then when you fired it back up, it would go ahead and do its thing. You can benchmark, you can stress test, you can set it to quiet. These I'm going to leave all false because I don't want to stress test or benchmark, and I definitely don't want it set to quiet to hinder any performance. Alright, so back over in the remote session, I went ahead and populated my Raptoreum address right here, and then I labeled out my worker name, which is altered, and then I put 1600af because that's the specific CPU I'm going to be using, and I only have one of those, so that's what I'll start with. Leaving the algorithm, the threads, like I said, I'm going to make it 10 threads. And then I changed full tune to true. Now I could just leave the pool, but I discussed with Mad Electron Engineering and Crypto Shaped, both out of the Misfit Mining Discord. Make sure to join if you haven't, by the way. And I went ahead and got their advice, and they said this is the tested best pool, and it came from Rabid Mining as well. Great YouTubers, all of them, great content producers, and great miners. So I'm going to take their advice. I'm going to heed their advice. And the first thing I did was I went to miningpoolstats.stream. I looked up RTM, Raptoreum, and these are all the pools that are currently hashing away on this thing. And so then I pulled up, there it is. This is the one they're telling me, 011data.com, 011data.com. So let's go ahead and click it, and here it is. This is the main pool page right here. All right, so I'm already got the pool address now up here under the URL. I've got stratum plus TCPS Raptorna. .011data.com, and then the port is 3008, and this is the community pool, and this is the one that Rabbit has been pushing, so we're gonna go with it. And then I left my backup as the one that was already in here for Flock Pool. Okay, so everything's in here, and the last thing we gotta do is tune this thing. So before we start this process, let's go ahead and close everything out. Let's get rid of Google, and let's cut all of this off. We don't need the website or the downloads. Let's cut that. Let's shut the file explorer. Let's go ahead and even close Afterburner. I had Ryzen Master open where I tuned the CPU, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it at stock clocks, and see what it does on stock clocks. I do have this thing very well tuned if I apply the tune. 4.05 gigahertz on all cores, 1.31 voltage. That's a pretty good tune. This Ryzen 1600af model, it can be pretty optimally tuned. So maybe what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do a full tune on it with the stock clocks on the CPU, and then we'll apply our own overclocks to the CPU, and then we'll retune it and see what that does, because I'm not real sure what that does if you're doing your own overclocking and then you're tuning in the miner afterwards. So we're gonna try that out. Let's go ahead and close the rest of this stuff out here. We want to run as admin, yes, and fire it up. Could not load the tune config file. Interesting, because there isn't one. That makes sense. Could not prepare huge pages, and that was discussed by someone else too, and I'm not going to worry about that right yet. I'll work back to that later. You're not supposed to touch the mouse, so I'm going to just take the mouse up here, and I'm going to close this thing out. I'm just going to let it run. Alright, so here we are. We're back over into our remote session. This is a couple days later. I've done so much testing and just playing with this just because in the name of science, I had to know what is the optimal way to set this thing up. How can I get the most out of it? How can I get my CPU mining RTM at the same time as my dual 3060s are, and both running efficiently and getting the most out of this one PC all the time? So here it is. This is what I ended up with, and let's just run through it real quick. You can see I have the dual 3060 Ti's running in the back screen. They're both doing about 48 to 49 mega hash apiece on Ethereum, and of course they are the Rev 1 Gen 1 3060s, and that's why I'm using the dev drivers, and I have displays outs on these, and they're both slotted in physically to the X16 slots with at least X8 lanes running to them. That's how I can get the full hash rate. There's plenty of tutorials on that if you need assistance with that. So back to the mining. Then over here I've got my CPU running, and it's got 10 of the 12 cores allotted. Now what have I done up to this point? For the testing, when we ended off, I was going ahead and doing the benchmark on this thing, and the benchmark takes 222 minutes, which I thought was an odd number, but it runs through the complete full auto tune is what it is. It's a full auto tune, and it basically is benchmarking. It's testing all the parameters of your CPU, and it's giving you the best results, and then that's when it's going to mine. It's going to use those numbers that it's going to plug in. It's almost like its back-end config file for your specific CPU. So that had my mind racing, like, okay, what if we tune this with 10 cores? Okay, we did that, full tune. What if we full tune it with 12 cores? So then next I was like, okay, let's put on our overclock using Ryzen Master, and let's full tune again. And I have a really good, really stable hardcore tune for this thing where I run 4.05 gigahertz, and I put the core voltage up to 1.31, I believe. And this thing is fully stable. I've tested it out. I've ran tons of stress tests on it. I know it's a great benchmark, but when I would run it and run auto tune, it would crash. About halfway through, it would crash out. And so then I'm like, okay, let's lessen the manual tune and let's auto tune again. Again, it crashed out. And what I was seeing is, and you can see it on the screen here, is that one of the cores gets pretty hot. Core 3 on this one is up to 81.3 when it's running right now. But when I had that overclock with a higher voltage, it was actually causing it to crash out. And I don't know why that one core runs so much hotter and so much more fiercely on this, but that's what was causing it to crash out. So even when I would put my manual tune on there, it would always have an issue. So I pulled that manual tune off, and then I thought, okay, let's auto tune without the overclock, and then fire it up and mine and apply the overclock. Same thing, it would spike that third core's temperature so high that eventually it would crash the system down. So After all that testing, I reverted back to 10 cores on the full auto tune, and it's been running pretty efficient. It's been running pretty solid. And so let's go look at the pool and what we're actually doing here. And so here we are, we're over in our pool, and I'm using the O11 data community pool, which seems to be working pretty well, and as everyone has told me is the best. And so I did find out something interesting on this pool is that the minimum payout is 100 RTM, and there is no way to actually change that minimum, according to my man, Mad Electron Engineering. So I'm going to go ahead and mine this one CPU on there until I get up to 100. Actually, I'm probably going to add a couple more CPUs since I already have them laying around, and then I'm going to get that balance up to 100 and get my first payout. And really, 100 is not that much when you think about the fact that RTM is worth less than 6 cents a piece, so that's $6, and it makes sense. But on Flock Pool, which initially my miner kicked over to because they were updating the O11 data pool, the minimum is 1. So when you get to 1 and it gets to the next payout cycle, you're going to get paid out. So my wallet currently has 2.3304 RTM in it, where Flockpool did pay me out. They paid me out twice, and I got 2.33. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're running one CPU and you don't want to wait to get to 100 RTM, you might want to change to Flockpool, and then that way you can change your minimum payout, and it looks like it's easy to change. You probably put in your IP like you do on any other pool. But right now, the community pool doesn't have that easy change ability. As for the hash rate, you can see right here my average hash rate overnight. I haven't touched it all night. Let it run as 966 hashes per second, which isn't bad for a single CPU. And the total hash rate currently is running 1.18 kilohash, which is probably higher than it actually has been running. It's just bouncing up a little bit. So in a few days of just playing with this and tuning and wasting a lot of time retuning and it going offline because I'm overheating and I'm trying to get this thing honed in, I've made a whole 16 RTM on this one CPU. And how much does that actually equate to? Let's go look at the current price. You can go to CoinGecko.com. You can look up the RTM, and here's the current price for it. So about 0.056 cents per. So let's go to 16 times 0.05. Let's just do 57, round it up. I've made about a whopping 91 cents in probably 2.5 days of playing with this, but in reality, this thing's probably only been mining for a day and a half worth. So that's not too bad. This CPU is an older CPU, but it's a newer CPU. It's a Ryzen 1600af model. And a while back, Ryzen, actually AMD, made this chip, and they started making it on the 10 nanometer process, which made it essentially a cut down Ryzen 2600. These things came out, they were all over YouTube because they were such a great value. I paid $85 for this CPU. $85 brand new. And I've been using it, and I had it in the main system, and of course I've upgraded to a 2600, then a 3600, and a 5600X. But I still hold on to this one because it's such a great CPU and it's great value, and it can be really pushed. So let's hop over into this handy little tool that my man Chump Chain showed on his video. This is the Raptoreum Mining Hash Rate Calculator. I'll include this down in the description, and it's got a bunch of the most popular CPUs listed here in the list, and some are missing for sure, like under the 2000 series. I don't see the 2600, and that's really the one I want to use when I'm trying to compare my CPU to what it should mine per day. So if I input my CPU, which is a Ryzen 5 1600, however, this 1600 is probably the old AE model, not the AF model. But I go ahead and select it, and then we'll go down and we'll leave the electric cost in there is 12 cents, and that's what it's going to calculate at. Right here, 12 cents for me. And then it's showing the watts, and that's pretty close to the watt at the wall for this PC. And it's telling me that I would make 36 cents worth of RTM a day before electric, and it's telling me that I would make a whopping profit of 6 cents USD per day. That would be 1 RTM profit per day, roughly. And it's telling me that I would earn about 6 RTM per day. And I know that's a little low because this CPU actually would do more than that. So let's try a similar, let's try the 3600. It's not quite a 3600, but it's close. So we selected the 3600. Let's scroll down, and it's telling me that it would still use about the same energy, which is right, 36 cents per day. And then it tells me there's a profit to be made of 59 cents of RTM a day. So that's not too bad, and that's probably closer to what this CPU will mine full tilt as it stands on all cores. So let's put a bow on this. Would I advise others to mine RTM? Do you have the CPUs in hand? Do you have AMD? If so, then by all means, put this thing on, put it to work. Get those extra hashes, earn a little bit of extra hash rate. Make sure that your temperatures are staying well. If your temperatures are not getting too high, then there shouldn't be any kind of actual strain or damage on the CPU. Ryzen have been known to degrade performance over time. It's been tested, and this is a confirmed fact, but that's generally when they are really pushing these things, super high overclocks, and getting them consistently really hot. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, would I advise people to run out and buy these premium CPUs and buy brand new hardware and set up an $800 system to mine just RTM because there's not a whole lot of other options for CPU mining that are viable at the moment? Probably not. The difficulty on this stuff just keeps going up and up and up, and the whole market is sinking slightly right now, and so the price is down and the difficulty is up. So if you can find a good deal on a 3900X, if you can find a good deal on one of these higher end CPUs with a whole lot of cores, then yeah, go for it. But don't get crazy. Don't go overpay. Don't go buying 5-6 CPUs just to CPU mine. You might regret it here in a couple months. That's just my opinion. Feel free to tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm crazy. Tell me what you're running. Place it all down in the comments. We all want to hear about it. Thank you for coming along on this journey. Let's go ahead and spin that outro.